Hi everyone, I'm Dare. I live and work in Hollywood and I'm in the film business. Today what I want to talk about is a question which paralyzes many budding filmmakers, which is which digital cinema camera should I buy? Now for this episode in particular, you're going to want to go to the courses page that I have, because under the free course on how to choose your digital cinema camera, I've put all the assets in one easy to download place, including a pretty cool spreadsheet that we're going to use that follows the top cameras that I cover in this episode. So go over there, log into that course, download the assets so you can follow along with this. It's all free, so easy to do. And also check out the blog article, which goes into more detail on what we're going to cover. All right, so let's get started. Most people actually go about choosing their digital cinema camera completely backwards. Now, before I get into that, I want to touch upon, there's a photographer who made a statement a few years ago that got really popular on the internet, and that is, the best camera is the one that you have. And this is Chase Jarvis, and I think he's an amazing photographer who I really respect, but that statement is a bit misleading. I think it's right and it's wrong. Now, how I think it's right is because it gets a lot of people to stop endlessly procrastinating about, oh, which camera, I can't shoot till I have the right camera, and gets them shooting. Because the truth is, continually shooting material is what's going to make you better at your craft. It's going to make you better at your craft than just getting a new camera. A new camera will only help improve the skills that are already there to realize your creative vision. But if you don't know how to realize a creative vision, no camera in the world is going to save you. Okay, so that's what's right about it. What's wrong about it is, the truth is, for many jobs, the camera that you may have right now, if you have one, might not even be the right camera. What if you've got a handy cam and all it shoots is HD and you need a 4K capable camera for a client who wants 4K footage? Well, clearly the best camera is not the one you have. Okay, so, and I think this falls more into the cinematography realm than the photography realm, because I think most people in the photography realm want a better camera to shoot amazing photos for themselves, friends, and family. Not necessarily they're trying to make a career out of it. Whereas people who are buying digital cinema cameras are trying to make a paying career as fast as possible. So that being said, the best camera is the one you have is one way of saying it, which I've covered. Here's how I cover it. The best camera is the most affordable one which meets the highest technical and aesthetic requirements for the work you do or the work you want to do. Now, what do I mean by this? And this ties into what I said earlier, which is that most people go about this completely backwards. They just look, they're comparing cameras from specification to specification with no real frame of reference. The frame of reference has to be, what are the people going to pay you going to expect? What are the minimum technical requirements that they will expect? Well, if they just want a great image, well, okay, well that pretty much opens it up to everything. There's some really cheap cameras that have great images to choose from. But if they have specific technical requirements, such as a RAW workflow or a 4K workflow, well, that starts narrowing the field of what cameras are available to buy. Now, if you look at the spreadsheet that I put together for this episode, you'll see that I cover here pretty much the cameras that you can get for under $20,000, including the C100 Mark II, the FS700, the Ursa Mini 4.6, the FS7, the C300 Mark II, the Red Raven, the Red Scarlet W, the PMW F5 by Sony, and the Panasonic Varicam. These are all great cameras, but they each have their own uses. So if you're serious about having a career, you have to tie all these things that are bouncing around your head in terms of choosing a camera with real world facts. So I have 7 steps that I've listed out that will help you find the perfect digital cinema camera for you. Let's go over these rapidly. The first is to examine the work you're doing right now that's actually getting you paid, plus the work that you want to do in the immediate future, or let's say in the next 2 years, and make a list of the top 10 technical requirements you know that work will have, like the specifications that have to be there in a camera to actually get the jobs that you want. Here's an example, and I've covered this on the blog post so you can see it rapidly, what my 10 steps are. But let's say for me, I need run and gun covered really well. Like I need a camera that is light, easy to use. I can mount it on a gimbal. I can mount it on a lightweight slider, and it's ready to go. It needs to be able to adapt to lighting situations rapidly. So for me, internal ND is a huge plus, near the top of my list, but form factor is number one, without a question, and the ability to go from low light to bright light. Okay. The second one would be something like having good recording formats and camera styles that allow me to do a lot of grading work in post, or ready to go right out of the box with no grading necessary. And for me, minimum codec wise, color space wise, would be 10-bit 422, because I know I've got all the color information I need in there to be able to push it around very heavily in post. Next, low light capability. There's just so many times when you're doing work that has a low budget that you don't have the lighting that you want, and being able to shoot a great looking scene with low light is amazing. So that's number 3 on my list. And realize I'm going, for me, from most important on the way down. Next, excellent dynamic range to shoot interiors where you can also see out of the exteriors at the same time. So at least 13 stops, ideally 15 stops is my minimum. Next up, 4K capability. This is 4th down on the list, and there's just a lot of clients these days which have minimum delivery requirements of 4K, with the upside that they're willing to pay more for 4K footage. Next, I need a camera that can use EF lenses, but that could also be adapted for PL lenses. I understand that it might have to go to the shop, but it needs the capability of being adapted to one or the other. Next, being able to be mounted to a drone or to a Ronin Movi type stabilizer. So it means it has to have a light form factor and be easily adaptable to that. Even if it's at the outer edge of that range, it still has to be able to do it. Next, I want to have pro audio capability right there. Most of the time I'll have a separate sound guy, but even when I do, I like to tap off of his mixer, his recorder on set, and put a line into the camera so that my scratch audio on the tracks sounds great right away, and it's not just whatever audio the camera could grab. Even though it's great to have the camera audio, it's even better to have a pro input so that you can get good sound right away, and if you don't have a sound guy, so that you get sound straight into the camera. 9th on the list is slow motion capabilities. Now, for some people, that's going to be at the top of their list because that's just kind of what they shoot. For me, I mainly shoot 30 frames per second, or most often 23.976 or 24p. So those are the 2 formats I use most. Occasionally I shoot at 60 frames per second, and very rarely do I shoot at 120 frames per second unless I'm doing camera tests or some beauty shots just for the fun of it. But very few clients that I have need that sort of super slow motion. And last on the list is the ability to shoot RAW. I realize some people would have this at the top of their list, but for me, that's not the case. It's a nice to have, but the vast majority of my jobs do not require RAW shooting. And they've got a really fast turnaround, so they don't go through a very fast post process. But it's nice to have because there are a lot of people who want that these days, so they can craft very particular lighting looks in post and really don't have to worry about color balance on set. So RAW's on there. All right, so those are my top 10 technical requirements and specifications that I'm looking for. You may have 10 different ones. So make a list of them, and then the next step is to make a list of all the cameras that you're looking at that actually can do those 10, that have those 10 technical specifications that you're looking for. Okay? To save you time on this, I've already made the spreadsheet for you. Go to the course page, download it. It's in the first thing. It's free to download, and you can customize it however you want. You know, but if you look at the list, I've covered the camera model, the manufacturer link, the body price, the ready-to-shoot notes in terms of things that I've seen that you need, whether or not you need an external recorder for RAW, what the weight of the body of the camera is, the internal ND, if it has it or not, dynamic range, global or rolling shutter, autofocus capabilities, the sensor size, whether it has a monitor, what the max resolution is, what the max ISO is, what the lens mount it's capable of are, if it has pro audio inputs, what the battery solution is, built-in speakers, internal mic for scratch, also whether it's got Wi-Fi control, what the video outs are, time code, media cost, maximum data rate, internal 4K, internal RAW, can it do RAW with an external recorder, frame rates at 2K, 4K, recording format, color space, bit depth, what a good review site is for it, and the link where you can find it on B&H. So that was an intense amount of homework, so I hope I've saved you a lot of time by doing that. Go to the course page and download it for yourself. Next up, you need to make sure that on that list is the price of the camera plus the price of the camera with the accessories that it needs to be shootable. Sometimes one of these cameras will only come as a brain or a camera only, and you need things like a monitor, a media module. So just make sure you know what you're getting into, and you're not like, oh, I bought a great $7,000 camera, but I need another $7,000 to get it ready to go. Next step, step 4, cross off the list any that you can't afford. Don't torture yourself about it. You don't want to put yourself in such a bad financial position that you're desperate and crazy trying to pay off a camera instead of comfortably making money with it to actually pay itself off and build your career. Because realize you want to be making money for this and not just covering your bills to live. You want to be setting aside money to work on your passion projects that maybe nobody's going to be paying you for at first. Okay? Don't buy a camera you can't afford. Next step, step 5, look in the cameras that have the technical capabilities that you like and that meet your work requirements and choose the one that has the image that you like the most. A lot of people start on the image they like the most, but the truth is some of the lower end cameras such as the C100 Mark II have an amazing image, but they fall short in the technical specifications department, and don't waste your time getting excited over an image that isn't going to work for a job that needs 4K. As an example, or needs RAW and it doesn't shoot RAW, whatever the case may be. Step 6, rent the camera for a day. It doesn't make sense to spend thousands and thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars on a camera that you've never tried. Picking a camera is kind of like being Harry Potter in the wand store. You know, you kind of have to go from camera to camera, and when you find the right camera, it's like, you know, your hair will blow up, golden light will come out of some place that doesn't really make sense, and you'll be like, oh, this is the camera. So yes, the camera sort of picks the operator. So go to one of the bigger stores, they'll let you put your hands on it in the store usually, or they'll even have a testing place where you can look at it. And to really be sure, rent it for a day and go shoot something with it. Get some actor friends together, go shoot some beauty shots, get a feel for the camera and make sure that you actually like the ergonomics and how it functions in the real world, not just on paper or someone else's review. And the 7th step, final step here, is to not just look for price online of different stores and what they're selling it for, but actually call them up, find out what deals they have, what packages they have, and if they're doing financing. Financing is a great way to get a good camera without putting a ton of money up front. So, you know, like that was ultimately the last decision point on me buying the C300 Mark II, was because I could finance it with Canon and I was getting an amazing camera for $300 a month. It's like, imagine a month rental for $300. It's crazy. So get the best deal, see if you can finance it, and then go get your camera. Okay, so that's the 7 steps. The second half of this episode, what I want to kind of briefly discuss is the cameras that I've included on the list and sort of give you my summary opinions of them, and which you can take, throw out, disagree with, whatever you want to do with. But I thought I would give you sort of like my overview on these cameras. Now, the cameras that I've put on the spreadsheet, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These 9 cameras I think are the most relevant 9 digital cinema cameras on the market. And they're not DSLRs, which I'll cover in a separate episode, because really at a certain point you want to step beyond the DSLR form factor for something that's actually made for continuous shooting on a set with the pro tools and stuff in it that's really made for you know, cinematography, videography type production. Okay, so if we look at the top of this list, we have, and this is basically, I've arranged these by price. So it goes from cheapest to most expensive. Now, yes, I've got the C100 cheaper than the FS700, but that's just because you need a lot of things on the FS700 to sort of even get it to the point where the C100 Mark II is already. Okay, C100 Mark II, I think, is an amazing camera. The internal NDs, the form factor, and most importantly, the image. If you go look at on the Canon Cinema EOS site, look at that little video they did, the Fragments one, I think it's called. Wow, what an image. Just incredible. And my only caveat on it is that it doesn't do 4K. And the truth is, you're gonna find a lot of clients that require 4K. But if you don't, if you're a wedding videographer or you're just doing stuff for YouTube and mobile-based platform, that's not a deal breaker. So you won't find a better camera for the price with the specifications and that image on the market than the C100 Mark II, in my opinion. Disagree with me if you want, but that's my opinion. Next up is the FS700. Now, the FS700 has some incredible tech specs, and it can do 4K out. The slow motion is unbelievable, but here's the deal. If you start trying to grade that image, it starts falling apart pretty fast, and I don't really like the image that comes out of that camera without adjusting it in post. It's my own personal preference. However, if you're looking for the cheapest camera possible and slow motion is a huge deal to you, you can't go wrong with the FS700. Realize you're talking $4,000, and if you just invest another $4,000 more, you can get the FS7, which blows the FS700 out of the water. I think you're looking at a much more future-proof investment in the FS7, but we'll get to that. Next up is the Ursa Mini 4.6. In my opinion, this is the best camera for the money on the market. If you look at its 4K raw slow motion capabilities and the image that thing has for less than $5,000, it's unbeatable. And you've got, you can do an EF or a PL mount. Honestly, if I had been able to buy that camera, if it wasn't sold out everywhere, that would have been the camera I got. Now there's a caveat on this. That's just the body. You need a battery solution, so you're talking about another $1,000 on top of that. You also don't have internal NDs, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're doing a lot of run and gun, you want a good ND solution. You just do. So by the time you've got a good ND set, you can go with a cheap variable ND filter, but really in a pro situation, when you're using cinema type lenses, you're not really gonna have a screw-on ND for that. So you're talking about another $800, maybe $1,000 in ND plates for that, plus the matte box. Anyhow, it adds up. All that being said, if none of that bothers you, then that camera is amazing. As soon as I can afford it, that's definitely gonna be my B camera, no question. Next up is the FS7. The FS7 does slow motion, it does 4K, it has raw output capabilities with an adapter and an external recorder. So if you're gonna go the Sony route, to get raw, you're looking at probably, what did I figure out? Like almost another $7,000 plus the Sony media, which is like $1,800 bucks. Obviously you can save a little bit on that by going the convergent design route. But basically, Sony route, you're talking almost $15,000 to be raw capable on the FS7. But that's not really the deal breaker for the FS7 for me. I think as a corporate, if you're doing corporate video, hands down, the FS7 is a blowaway, especially because a lot of corporate videos do require slow motion capabilities. So if you're trying to save like that money and you don't need raw, you don't want to spend the extra $4,000 on the C300 Mark II, FS7 is amazing. Here's the only reason why I'm not a huge FS7 fan. I would not shoot a movie on it. It would require a lot of color grading to get the FS7 image to the point where I would consider it acceptable for a feature film. And that's just my taste. So throw that out. It's just my opinion why I didn't seriously consider that camera. Because the only thing, in my opinion, that it has that is better than the C300 Mark II is the price and the 4K 60p that it has. That's it. Anyhow, that's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Next up, we have the C300 Mark II at around $12,000. And this camera is, for me, one of the best cameras on the market. It never breaks down. It's weatherproof. It's got 10 stops of internal ND. It's 4K capable. It's outputting 4K raw right away. You don't need an adapter. You just go straight to an external recorder. It does up to 120 frames per second in 2K, and it looks gorgeous. and the image looks great right out of the box. You don't need to do a lot of grading on it. It's good to go. You've got C-Log 2 that can get you up to 15 stops of dynamic range. For me, it's an amazing camera. It is definitely, it's the one I shot my first feature film on. It is the one I have been waiting for, and it's finally here. And with the $4,000 price drop down to $11,999, it's still about $2K overpriced in my opinion. But you know what? Nothing's perfect. That's my opinion. Nothing's perfect, but this camera is perfect for me. Red Raven and the Scarlet. Look, if you're already invested in the Red ecosystem, then no question, go for those cameras. You've already made the investment. The cameras are amazing. Red cameras tend to be a very opinionated sort of thing, either by users 2 or 4. The simplicity of it for me is it comes down to what are you trying to do as an artist, and if you like that aesthetic, then go with that. Because certainly on the technical side of things, they're going to do everything you need. They've got the dynamic range, they've got the frame rates, they've got the raw capabilities. You're not missing out on anything on that. Just know what you're getting yourself into, because it starts to add up quick. You know what I mean? And I'm deliberately keeping this on the under $20,000 side, because once you go over that, you know, you're taking a lot of things out of consideration. Like if you're using an Arri, you've obviously got 3 people on your camera team that are helping you run that, plus a full DIT station. That's not what these cameras are about. These cameras are about getting down and dirty and doing a film with your friends and getting it done. And honestly, the more expensive the camera, once you go above $20,000, tends to increase the workflow and the personnel needed for it as a sweeping statement. Okay, so if you're invested in Red, go Red. The Sony F5, in my opinion, is the first of the Sony cameras. It's the first one that's on their level of Cine Alta, and it's the only, on this list, it's the only one that has an image that's acceptable for cinema, in my opinion. So take it or leave it. You know, you're talking $16,500 plus battery, plus monitor, plus viewfinder. So really, to get up and going, you're talking probably $23,000. But if you like that Sony image, it's definitely going to have all the technical capabilities that you want. But realize you're now at about $23,000 with all your accessories, and it's just something to think about. You could get 4 Ursa Minis for that price, or 2 C300 Mark IIs for that matter. So it's more expensive, but it's got a great image and some great technical specifications, but you're paying for it. Next up is the Panasonic Varicam LT4, and this again is almost $17,000 plus the batteries, plus the viewfinder, plus the monitor. So there's a lot to get it up and going. Plus it has the P2 media. Just realize that's proprietary media, similar to the Sony camera's proprietary media. And it's an incredible image. You know, it shoots 4K inside the camera, and if you're invested in that Panasonic look, then by all means go for it. If you're not, realize you're probably at around $27,000 before this camera is ready to go and raw capable, with all the accessories that you need to get it shoot capable. So again, you know, like when someone goes, well, why would you choose the C300 Mark II over the Varicam or the F5? And I just go, well, it's half the price for an image that to me is just as good or better. And that's my aesthetic choice. Okay, so those are the cameras. You can get that spreadsheet and all the manuals, all the brochures, the spec sheets, and all of that I've put under the free course on the Dare Cinema course website, which you can access for free. Please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've got a lot more great stuff coming up. And take a look at my other courses for editing, After Effects, and shooting. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you next time.